And those are the words of a gentleman. From the first moment I met you, your arrogance and conceit, your selfish disdain for the feelings of others made me realize that you were the last man in the world I could ever be prevailed upon to marry.
I have a confession to make. I'm a slow burn enthusiast. If two characters meet, fall in love, communicate effectively, and get together within the first 20 minutes, I wish them all the best, but I simply do not care. I need tension. I need prolonged eye contact. I need two people to have at least one conversation where they walk away convinced they dislike each other, only to spend the next 6 months thinking exclusively about that conversation. And for my money, few films do slow burn better than Joe Wright's adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. Because what makes Darcy and Elizabeth so compelling isn't just that they fall in love, is that they do it kicking and screaming. This is not a story about two people immediately recognizing their soulmate. This is a story about two people meeting, forming wildly inaccurate opinions about each other, defending those opinions with their entire chest, and then gradually realizing that they may have made several mistakes, and somehow that makes it even more romantic. So today, I want to talk about the art of the slow burn in Pride and Prejudice and how Joe Wright somehow turned yearning into an Olympic sport. The first thing I love about Darcy and Elizabeth in this adaptation is that the second Mr. Darcy walks into the assembly room, we know exactly who he is. Handsome, rich, evidently miserable. This man looks like he's being forced to attend a tax seminar. And then comes the insult. The insult heard around the world. She is tolerable but not handsome enough to tempt me. Sir, you have simply said no. You could have simply said I'm not interested. Now, naturally, Elizabeth overhears this and does what any self-respected woman would do. She places him on her personal enemies list immediately, and honestly, fair enough. But what I love is that their attraction starts long before either of them would ever admit it, because Mr. Darcy keeps looking and looking and looking some more. At some point, somebody needs to introduce this man to hobbies because why is he just staring at Mrs.? The thing is, Darcy is intrigued by Elizabeth almost immediately. The problem is that Darcy himself doesn't seem to realize what's happening. He thinks he's observing, he's studying, he's, assessing, but brother, you're falling in love. Then we get to Netherfield, or as I like to call it, Darcy's worst week ever. Because suddenly Elizabeth is everywhere, walking through fields, arguing with him, laughing at him, challenging him, being generally immune to his social status. And poor Mr. Darcy is absolutely fascinated. One of my favorite things about the Netherfield scenes is that Elizabeth is still completely unaware of what's happening. She's having a great time, she's sparring with him intellectually, she's making fun of him, she's rolling her eyes at him. Meanwhile, Mr. Darcy is sitting across the table experiencing a full existential crisis. And then we get the hand flex. I plan to do an entire video on this glorious scene, so we best leave it at this. Then we arrive at the dance. The dance. This scene deserves compensation for the amount of times I've watched it. Arguing, flirting while arguing. The line between the two becomes increasingly difficult to identify. Suddenly, everyone disappears. The room falls away and it's just them. And what I love is that this is probably the closest they have come to understanding each other up to this point. Which is unfortunate because they immediately proceed to misunderstand each other again. Now, if part 1 is attraction, part 2 is confusion. Maximum confusion. Olympic level confusion. Because by the time Elizabeth arrives at Charlotte's new home, Mr. Darcy is gone. The man is finished, he's cooked, he's done for. This man is showing up randomly, walking into rooms unexpectedly, appearing in the distance like a Victorian cryptid. Everywhere Elizabeth turns, there he is. And Elizabeth cannot figure out why. The awkwardness reaches peak level during their encounters at the Collinses, and I love every second of it because neither of them knows how to behave anymore. Elizabeth is confused, Darcy is nervous, his social anxiety is really at its peak at this point, and the tension is, delicious. You can practically see the words he wants to say getting stuck on the way out. Meanwhile, Elizabeth is still operating under entirely incorrect information. So every interaction is built on a foundation of misunderstanding, which is exactly why the slow burn works. And then we get the gazebo proposal, or as I like to call it, the most romantic disaster ever committed to film. Because make no mistake, the proposal is a catastrophe. A beautiful catastrophe, a cinematic catastrophe, but a catastrophe nonetheless. Darcy finally tells Elizabeth how he feels after approximately 900 years of yearning, and then immediately starts listing reasons why loving her was a terrible inconvenience. Brother, read the room. Elizabeth understandably responds by setting him on fire verbally. And honestly, they both needed it because the slow burn was never going to work if these two didn't finally say what they really thought. Everything comes out. The pride, the prejudice, the resentment, the hurt, the disappointment, their theories about each other. Everything is just like boom, 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 out. I have a more in-depth rant about this proposal, so you should definitely check it out. But for our purposes, this is their lowest point. Every misunderstanding culminates into this necessary outburst, and now we can have some traction towards the opposite direction. And this is where Joe Wright does something brilliant. He doesn't immediately reward the audience, he makes us wait again. Because after that proposal, Darcy doesn't chase Elizabeth. I mean, he explains himself in the letter, but more importantly, he changes quietly. And when Elizabeth arrives at Pemberley, she encounters a version of Mr. Darcy she's never seen before. He's relaxed, he's kind, he's warm, he's her idea of human. The actors were perfect in making this slow burn so iconic, but we have to give Wright his flowers too. His choice of where silence was necessary, the awkward pauses, the tension, even this scene where they were not with each other for up to 5 minutes was a masterclass in yearning. Then he introduces her to Georgiana, and I think this is one of the most important moments in their relationship because for the first time, Darcy allows Elizabeth into his private world, and Elizabeth finally gets to see who he actually is when he isn't defending himself or being judged or frankly doing the judging. And suddenly all the pieces begin to fit together. The man she thought she knew and the man standing before her are not entirely the same person, or perhaps they've both changed enough to finally see each other properly. Obviously, quite a lot happens in between with Wickham and Lydia and Lady Catherine, but we eventually get to the second proposal. The sunrise, the mist, the yearning, the reward. And what makes this scene so satisfying isn't the speech, which I can argue is perfection once more, but it's really everything that came before it that makes this final scene so rewarding. Again, I've done an in-depth rant on this too, so you should definitely check it out. I go back and forth between the two proposals and show how different they are between the two scenes. But yeah, I think that's why the slow burn in Wright's adaptation works so well. He understands that falling in love isn't always about grand moments. Sometimes it's about accumulation, a glance here, a conversation there, a misunderstanding, a realization, a hand flex that altered the course of human history. But he gives their feelings room to breathe, the room to develop, room to feel earned. By the time we reach that misty morning, we're not just watching two people fall in love, we're watching two people finally arrive at a place they've been moving toward the entire film. And maybe that's why, more than 20 years later, people are still talking about this adaptation. Because Wright didn't just give us a romance, He gave us one of cinema's greatest slow burns. And frankly, even all these watches later, I'm still recovering.